challenge yourself to take it a little further. Everything you do, whether it's a 4-H trick or your favorite routine.
First in Spanish, bienvenidos todos, vamos a comenzar ahora. Y partimos, nada más que decir. Welcome everyone to a new conversation organized by Conejo Negro. Today with us, a very special guest. You already know him, but just some interesting facts I have here. First place in the IBM competition on 1981. Consultant for David Copperfield and David Blaine's TV specials. Close-up Magician of the Year 2 years in a row. 2 times Lecturer of the Year and Parlor Magician of the Year. And in 2018, Magician of the Year by the Academy of Magical Arts and Science at the Magic Castle. Today with us, the great and only Mr. David Williamson.
Yeah, well, thank you. All that means absolutely nothing, right? It's just it's a big club, and we pass these awards around to each other when you get old enough, when it's your turn.
You pass the torch. Yeah.
First of all, thank you, David, for accepting our invitation and take part of the cycle of conversations about magic with guests from all over the world. We are really glad to have you here. Thanks for your time. Also, thanks to Antonio, who connects us with you. And thanks to everyone who is watching this right now. Hi, David. How is taking this tough time? Where are you right now?
I'm in Ohio. I'm looking at everybody. There's Victor, there's Carlos, there's Andre, there's Joaquin, there's Gabrielle, there's Germain, Luis.
A lot of people.
Is that Luis Otero? Oh, my friend Luis. Are you in Venezuela? Or are you in Argentina? Where are you? Argentina?
He's in Colombia.
No? Colombia. You have your... Nice to see you, my friend. Oh, I have a lot. You know, I love this because I'm looking at everybody and you can see their shoulders while they shuffle. Because everybody's hands are, and if everybody had their mics on, that's all we would hear is this the whole time. I love it, because I'm going to be doing the same thing. That's so cool. Ooh. And on this other screen, look who I see here, young man Thomas. Where's Thomas?
It's Thomas Phelps.
You met him at Magic Live in Vegas.
Magic Live, yeah, wonderful.
He loves you, really loves you.
I know, he's a stalker. I was going to have the authorities. So,
I was about to say that.
Tomás, el stalker de David Williamson, ya lo dijo.
The Williamson stalker. That's his
motto. I was so
motto.
happy to meet him finally. I've been watching him online. So
David,
sweet.
Just to put in a context, what were you doing before all this coronavirus problem?
This. I was working, with The Illusionists, which is a big production show. This company was bought by Cirque du Soleil, and it's been going for 7 years. And I know they came to Mexico. I don't know if they ever came down to Chile or Argentina.
Nope.
Did The Illusionists ever come to South America at all?
Not yet.
Brazil.
I'm not sure.
In Rio.
Yeah, probably.
And they had problems in Rio, I think. I wasn't in the show then. Brett Daniels, they had big problems during riots
Marcus
or something
says
like that.
that you were in Venezuela, I think.
Venezuela.
Were in Venezuela, yeah.
Luis was like,
was canceled in Venezuela.
It was canceled. Before I was involved. They had problems. They had some problems down there. That was when they had the young wild cast. There was lots of drinking and drugs from what I hear. Now they got old guys like me. It's just Diet Coke. And, it's much tamer cast. I was doing the Circus 1903. So I was in the middle of the tour of a U.S. tour with the Illusionists when we had to cancel the whole show. We stopped it. We had a month to go. We were going to go to California and LA and had a month of tour and go. But then we just had to stop everything. And everybody went home.
Oh, cool. And David, to start, please tell us about you. How did you start in magic, and who were the great reference in magic at that time?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a long story. I started the same way everybody here started. I probably. Although I don't know, I got a lot of young people here who probably started on the internet, but I started when I was a kid, 8 years old, in the 60s, the late 60s, and I got a magic set when I was a kid, and found magic books in the library. And then I eventually discovered that there was a little magic club near me, an hour away in the nearby town. And I was about 13. I was doing 3-card Monte in the candy store in my little town, stealing candy from the girls behind the counter, 3-card Monte. Because to me, magic was a way because I came from a crazy childhood. I want to explain it, but I was a wild child. You have that word feral, like a feral cat doesn't have a home. It was like, I wasn't homeless, but basically I spent all my time outdoors running around my little town and stealing and being bad. I was a bad boy.
You were like the black swan or the outlier.
I was the black swan. But anyway, magic to me was perfect as a con game. So I was doing 3-card Monte in the candy store for candy. And this woman is watching me, this older woman, and she grabs me and she goes, "That's not what magic is for." And she took me to the Magic Club, Ring 5, IBM Ring 5 in Dayton, Ohio. And every month, she and her husband were amateur magicians in my little town. And they groomed me. They civilized me. They said, "Here's the way magic, read this book, and here's the," and they got me involved in the club. And then I met all these wonderful, crazy people in magic. And then my trajectory, I knew what my future was. I turned to my mother when I was 9 years old. "I'm going to be a professional magician. Leave me alone." And she did. She let me, And then from that age, she used to put me on buses, and I would travel all over the U.S. by myself, age of 14 and 15 and 16. She would send me to magic conventions, and I met all the great magicians, Del Rey and Albert Goshman and Di Vernon and Larry Jennings and Derek Dingle and, all my heroes, and Jay Marshall and just all the wonderful magicians of that era. So I went to a lot of magic conventions, and that was my family. I kind of grew up in magic, through magic. I didn't have any friends. And to this day, I'm proud to say I don't have any friends, good friends, that are laymen. All my friends are magicians. When I'm with a layman, well, I have nothing to talk about. What am I going to talk about? Mowing the lawn or baseball? I don't care about that shit.
Magic is for life.
That has nothing to do with me. Laymen, I look down at them. I feel sorry for them. But anyway, but I grew up in magic, so I've been traveling around, going to magic conventions and doing shows. I just knew I was going to be a professional magician, so it's been in my life. And the first time I met anybody from the Spanish school of magic, actually from Mexico, was why am I blanking on his name? Jose de la Torre.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
He came to Abbott's convention when I was 13. He was there, and he had his knife book, and he was doing the color changing knives. It was the first time I saw anybody do it really well. And then I met a few years later, I met Juan Tamariz and some of the guys from Spain, and Mr. Ascanio, and I just love those guys.
Yeah. Unknown people, yeah.
Unknown, all the unknowns.
David, here comes a question from the audience. From an early age, your artistic proposal felt very clear to you, we think. How was your path to reach your style?
Well, I think everybody takes a different path depending on, their life circumstances. But I was just talking to somebody the other day about this, and I have to say, people that I loved in magic, like I saw a lot of great magic growing up. But the first really wonderful, that changed my mind about how magic could look, I was 15 in my little town, a lecture came, and it was John Carney, who was then a great student, a very serious student of Di Vernon and Charlie Miller and the great close-up guys, Roger Klaus and Fawcett Ross were his teachers. And he was the first person I saw of that style with that naturalness, who I call it he was a high priest in the school of naturalness, or in the church of naturalness. He was a high priest, but he was young. He was only 18, but he was the first person to really fool me with close-up magic where it looked like magic. I mean, I had seen some great close-up magicians before then, but they were technically great, and they maybe were very entertaining, but it just didn't feel like magic. But when I saw John work, his shoulders weren't hunched and his moves weren't jerky, and he was just so charming and smooth and nice and funny. He completely disarmed me. So anyway, my point is, from that point on, that I knew that was my path. I loved that idea. So I took it very seriously. I was a serious student of magic, and I went toward the classic books and the classic styles, and I studied people like, and my contemporaries were people like Mike Amar and Paul Gertner and people like this, Young and Daryl, who was great. But I took it very seriously, is my point. So my style, when I was in my teens and my early 20s, was very stiff and very formal, because I wanted to be seen as a serious magician because I worked so hard at it and I was very studious. So I was very boring when I did it. I was very boring. And I was working with a tuxedo, and I was working in restaurants and dinner theaters, and I was getting bored with myself, and it wasn't really my true personality. I had this screen in front of me of what I thought a great sleight of hand. I was like the Lance Burton of the crappy restaurant, Denny's, or something like this, McDonald's. And then one day when in my early 20s, I went to Atlanta, took a road trip down to Atlanta. I saw Tom Mullica working in his bar, and he was a great magician and a great technician, but he was also a clown, but in the best sense of the word, a true clown. He was funny, and he did great magic as well. And it opened my eyes, and I saw that people I couldn't stop laughing, and I was amazed, and he used the humor and the magic, and it was like, I told people it was like being in the ring with Mike Tyson, because I was beat up with magic and laughter the whole night. It was the most wonderful experience up until then. So when I went home after that, I grew up with two brothers, and we were always very funny and goofy and clowning around and always had fun. But I separated that. I kept that in a different room when I did magic. But then after seeing Mullica, I realized I could open the door and let the maniac come in a little bit. And then from there, I started having fun in magic, and then the creativity came more, and I got more jobs because I was more entertaining and people would hire me now. So I always credit Tom Mullica with changing my mind about how magic could be performed in close-up magic.
And it was difficult to you to know the balance in between comedy and magic? How did you get that?
Yes, it still is. I still don't know where the balance is. It's still difficult. I mean, I was talking to somebody, Harrison Greenbaum, the other day, and it's like, I crossed the line many times because you don't know where the line is until you cross it. I would go crazy. I would go crazy, and the magic would just suffer. And I remember once Juan was giving a lecture in London, and he had a chart. And he was talking about, I couldn't really follow what he was saying, but he had a chart. He was talking about how the humor should push the magic, right? The humor should support the magic. But every time he made a point, he pointed to me in the front row, and he'd go, except for Williamson. And then he'd say something else, and he'd go, except for Williamson. And then he'd make another rule, and he goes, except for Williamson. And I don't know if he meant I was doing it wrong, or I'm the exception, or I didn't quite know. And I'm like, why is he saying except for Williamson?
I imagine it was the latter. Yeah.
I don't
know. You didn't know if you have to cry or laugh.
I don't know. I didn't know you had to cry.
Yeah. But you're aware of that, right? You're aware of when you cross the line towards more comedy and you put the magic aside, because also you now start to flow with whatever you feel the audience is like.
I'm aware of it. Yeah, I know. I know when I've, I mean, I found myself halfway through a trick, like a ring and rope or something, and I'm in the middle, and I go, you guys don't want to see this, and I grab the person and get him in it, and then we just start wrestling because I feel it, it's like, It was the right thing to do at that moment.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to anybody going like this in the audience during my show.
Yeah.
Looking at their watch, it was just like a dagger in my heart. So I don't have great magic, so I make up for it with high energy, and it's clowning. And I haven't been able to marry them. It took me 40 years to figure out. Only now am I starting to relax a little bit and think about blending it and making it a nice product. 40 years later, now that the virus is here and I'm not working, I've finally figured it out. And one of the things that forced me to do that was working for Circus 1903, and I play the ringmaster in this show, and I do magic and I do comedy, but I also have a script and I have to carry the story, and I'm in character, and they're counting on me. I can't just go off and be crazy. I have to stay within the script and the character. But that has forced me to kind of, and I have a director and I have producers, and there's a lot of money behind this show. So I can't just do whatever I want. And it's forced me to be a little more thoughtful about what I am actually going to do on stage. And it takes me a long time to learn good lessons. I'm not a fast learner.
David, for all of us, it's very clear that you have a specific rhythm when you perform. How is that you adapt that in the tracks that you're working in your tricks, in your magic life?
I don't even understand the question. I'm not that smart. I have a question. How come Luis Otero looks the same age he did when I met him 25 years ago? He hasn't aged.
He has a pact with the devil.
It's a Zoom filter. He's got the Zoom filter on.
He's got the Instagram filter, the TikTok filter, yeah.
Yeah. He was so kind. I came to Buenos Aires years ago with my son, and I was at a complete loss. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know where to go, what to do. So he let me follow him around, and he took good care of me. Thank you, Luis. It's good to see you. And he showed me that wonderful one deck routine of the matching of the cards with one deck. Do you still do that? Oh, it's so good.
He does. That impulse change from Jack Carpenter, that change he does with the card out of the deck, and he changes it. It's a move from Jack Carpenter, and he mastered it. So he does a lot of tricks with it too.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
David, here is another question.
He's flashing his bottom deals, Benja. I can hear them from here, all the way in America. I can hear them coming off the bottom.
Do you seek influences outside magic, like in other disciplines or artists?
Influences, if I had to say, do I have any influences from any other art form? I guess the closest thing would be comedy, really. I loved, Steve Martin growing up, and silly people. I loved Monty Python. I like old men who do silly things, so if I had an influence in another art form, it wouldn't be theater or film necessarily, or music or the fine arts. It would be the Three Stooges or something like that. The Marx Brothers, I would say. I just love to laugh. I love clowning. I love comedy. I love having audiences having a good time. Like Victor Borga was a big hero. The comedy piano player.
Yeah.
To watch him sit down to play, he would take 20 minutes to play one, the minute waltz, because of all the clowning to get there. And he was so charming. And if you guys don't know who Victor Borga is, look him up on YouTube. Victor Borga, the Great Dane. He was a Danish classical musician, and he played wonderful music when he wanted to. He was as good as any other top flight pianist out there, but he was a natural clown and a character. And when I watched him, I said, I want to be the Victor Borg of magic. I want people to have that much fun when they're seeing a boring card trick. So there were people in magic who kind of reminded me of Victor Borge, you know, the great comedy magicians, but they had chops. They were good. They weren't just prop magicians. They actually could do. Juan Temeri's a perfect example. People think he's just some crazy idiot. Meanwhile, he's a mad genius. And Del Rey, who was a wonderful sleight of hand man, but he was a character and he was funny, and Albert Goshman and people like that. I just love, you know, entertainers who had chops.
What do you remember of Del Rey? Because he's not that well known as probably Albert Goshman. And now recently there have been some videos posted from Gary Plants of Del Rey performing, and he's so original. What do you remember him when you think of Del Rey?
Yeah, he was he's my favorite magician, living or dead, and he always has been since the first time I met him. He used to come through my little, he lived not too far from me, so sometimes he would come through my little town in Dayton, Ohio, and stop at our magic club. And so I met him when I was 13, and then I, you know, saw him many times over the years. I've worked with him, and when he died, I took over some of his regular gigs. He was, I don't know how to explain it. How do you explain it? I was just in love with the guy. He was a class act. I remember the first time we saw him, he was driving through the snow in his white Cadillac. And it was snowing. He was driving up to the theater where the little show was going to be. And me and the other teenagers were in our coats, and we're walking towards the theater to go see the show. And he glides by in this beautiful white Cadillac. He had a tuxedo. He had a white scarf. He had white gloves. He had a cigarette in a little white cigarette holder like this. His hair was slicked back. He looked like a gangster, you know, from a movie. And he was driving, and he just kind of turned. And I see it in a romantic way, in slow motion. He just kind of went like this, boom. And I went, I want to be him someday. Of course, I could never be him because he was so great. He was so cool. He was the same character on stage as off. Everything he did was original. You know, he was Harry Blackstone Sr., the great stage magician from the 20s and 30s. He was his backstage assistant when he was a young man. So he had a deep knowledge of how all kinds of magic worked, and but he was a sleight of hand man, and he tinkered and he made his own little props and just had a unique vision and a unique character. And he came up under people like Blackstone, old school guys like Blackstone and so forth. He wasn't on TV. He never did. Later in life, he did magic invention, but he didn't hang around magicians much, and you could tell it because he did things that nobody else did, and he did them in a way that nobody else did them. He was a complete original.
Real original.
And, yeah, and that's what I loved about him.
Well, David, here I have another question, a deep one, I think. Do you believe that magic is an art by itself, or it has to be, or it has to be spiced? Let me finish. This is a question from Jose Manuel Illanes. You know him.
Oh, yeah.
Do you believe that magic is an art by itself, or it has to be spiced with other elements, like in your case, comedy?
Here's my question. Why ask that question? I avoid answering questions about art and what is art, and art has to do with intention. What do you intend? If you intend it to be a piece of art, then it's a piece of art. You intend it to be a way to pay your mortgage, then it's a way to pay your mortgage. You intend it to be a way to meet girls, then it's a way to meet girls. So I don't know. I don't, that's why you never see me in these interviews when they have people holding pipes and answering philosophical questions. You never see me in any of those discussions or articles, because I'm not one of the, you have to be an organized thinker to answer a question like that. I'm not an organized thinker. I don't know. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. I don't know if it's an art. I don't care.
But what if you don't care? That's okay. But what if we take the word art? Do you like magic only by itself? It's enough, or should be spiced with other things?
Oh, I don't know. That's subjective. It's enough for me.
Yeah, of course. But we want to know your vision.
I could sit and watch magic all day long. I don't care how good or bad it is, or if it's just the paddle move, for 20 minutes. I'm like a dog. If it's moving and it's magic, I'll watch it. Because I'm sick. I have an illness like all of you. I have the same mental illness. I've bitten by the bug. It's like a virus. It's like coronavirus, but it's, I don't know. That's a good question. And if I talk for 90 minutes, by the end of that 90 minutes, I might have an opinion about it. And then tomorrow I would change my opinion because I'd see something that would make me change my opinion. I don't know. I'm not going to make any kind of statement on that. But, I do love magic for magic's sake. It depends on the person doing it. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. I come back to the very simple sayings, the simple, keep it simple. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. The simple advice that the old guys always gave me at the Magic Club. I keep going back to that,
Maybe the answer lies where when you talk about your inspirations, when you talk about Del Rey, you talk about Albert Goshman, they're so different. Del Rey was pure magic, probably a less comedy, and Albert Goshman had also a lot of comedy. So probably the answer lies pretty much in between. It's
in between. The thing about Slidini and Albert Goshman and Del Rey, who were always my top three favorite musicians, they each were strong, original characters.
Yeah.
Strong, different, original personalities. And on top of that, they were technically original and very high level. None of them ever phoned it in. They weren't just going through the motions. They cared about what they were doing. So they were original, they were strong personalities, and they worked hard on the magic, and they all just had that something. I don't know. There's a word, isn't there? It's we call it, in show business, you go, they have it. What's it? I don't know.
The extra oomph. Yeah.
It. And so there's some people who just have it, and they were born to do it. Everything in Slidini's childhood, and as a young man, and as a middle-aged man, as an older man, it's all in his DNA, brought him to where this wonderful little man, just fooling everybody with throwing a paper ball over somebody's head. I mean, it was just, that's never been seen before. Nobody thought of doing that. Nobody does it like him. Even the people who do it after he did it, who try to imitate him, it'll never be the same. It was iconic, iconoclast. That's a word that I use, iconoclast. Like Picasso or Hemingway. A lot of people wrote, but a lot of people painted, but they kind of changed the way people painted after they came.
Yeah.
Cool. David, there's another one about how you face your shows, and I think this is a really interesting thing. And what if when you start a show?
What? Go ahead.
Sorry. When you start a show and the spectators' feedback is not what you were expecting,
that happens.
Do you stick to the plan? Do you stick to the plan, or start to improvise to change the situation?
I do this.
Yeah.
I changed the plan. Yeah. If it's not what I expect, and the older I've gotten, the more comfortable I am in my own skin. Because when you die on stage, when things go wrong, when things go badly and you die and they don't like you, year after year after show after year, it happens less over time, and your skin gets thicker and thicker and thicker, like a rhinoceros, and after a while, I'm more comfortable. I know I have this armor. Your attitude won't hurt me. I'm going to do my show. I'm going to finish my show, whether you like it or not. And then you can relax. And that's when I start having fun, because I'm not worried about. And then I've learned how to channel, positivity but it takes time, it takes experience, and it takes a lot of arrows shot at you, from the audience, and over time you learn how to dodge the arrows, and now you have strategies before you go on stage to keep them awake, keep them from, you're never going to make everybody happy, you know, all the time. But it's just, it's over time, right? I mean,
you have a fun episode.
I died a lot of deaths before I got comfortable enough to not worry about dying. And then it's when I stopped worrying about it, that's when it stopped happening so much, you know?
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
It's part of the process, yeah.
Totally. You had an episode with a little kid called Murray that got really, really a bit famous, you know?
Little bastard.
That's a really funny story.
Yeah.
Could you tell us for maybe some of us don't know?
Yes.
Sorry to open that wound, by the way.
Yeah, it is a wound.
Sorry for that.
I tell people Murray is the best and the worst thing that ever happened to me in magic at the same time. We were doing a TV show. It's all on a video on YouTube. Look it up.
Yeah, I can post it, yeah.
And then I tell the story at a London convention, and then I meet Murray 20 years later. Did you see that video as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't.
Oh,
yeah.
You need to see it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the producer, it was John Fisher was the producer of this magic show, and he was the producer for Paul Daniels. He was a very important man, the historian of magic, and a big BBC producer.
Yeah.
And we had a show, and he said, what can you do close up with somebody at the table that looks good on camera? Visual card trick. And I said, my friend Gary Plants makes a wonderful gimmick for the stretching the queen. You know, he's got a flap card. So when you stretch here, this one will come up here, but then you can push them back together, drop it, and then you can show both sides of all three cards because it's a very thin flap, because he splits the cards and makes them extra thin before he puts the rubber, etc. So we had Gary, we called him in Texas. He made one, he FedEx it to LA, comes $500. We had a man go to London Heathrow, pick up just the card, come to the studio. By the time it got there and all the trouble, we only had 30 minutes to rehearse it for the camera before the audience came in. So I'm rehearsing it, and it looks perfect on the camera, you know, at the close-up table. And now we're going to start the show, and they bring a little kid in to sit at the table. A little boy is going to watch it. And he was the son of one of the makeup ladies or something, just happened to be wandering around the studio. He sits at the table, and the table's this high on him. He's sitting like this. His nose is basically, you know, kind of on the table. So I immediately go, here's a trick with 3 cards. And he goes, no, that's 4. He's looking right at the edge, and he picks it up, and he goes, and he just tears the thing apart like there's 4 cards there. And I went, thank you, Murray, get up. And the audience was howling, and I didn't know what to do. And it was so funny. But the best part of that is that John Fisher, the TV producer, was smart enough to know that that's the best thing that happened all week in our filming the show. So he left it in, and it played in the show, the whole mistake, and me just reeling and the audience laughing, and then the credits are rolling afterwards. So that made its way to, when the internet came around, it was rediscovered, and it got all these hits, you know, little boy pulls one over on an idiot magician, you know, and it's like got 1 million hits. So Murray became famous again. But for years, it was a blooper. They would show that on TV shows when things go wrong. Somebody got mauled by a tiger, or
really?
car hit children, or little kid, you know, and then I got money. I would get $100 bill, you know, $100 check for these shows. So anyway, that's the Murray story. It's online. It was just it's a cute little boy figuring out my trick.
The Return
El
of
enlace
Murray.
del video está aquí en el chat por si alguien lo quiere ver.
Yeah, The Return of Murray. They show the original video.
We show the original, yeah.
David, what do you think about taking risks in magic?
Well, I think, what do you guys think? I don't know. Why do I have these answers? I don't know. I think every smart thing there is to think about it. I think you need to, though. I think if you don't take any risk in life, you know, no risk, no reward. But it is a risk, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. And you know, when I think about taking a risk in magic, for example, when I would be performing, let's say, a trick for some people. Hello, what's your name? What do you do for a living? Wonderful. Are you enjoying your time here? Wonderful. That's about as deep as most, we go, because I want to get to the magic, right? But as I got older, I start mining for gold. You start mining for gold, and you start linking people together. So now a risk for me would be to say something like, I don't know, but beyond what's your name, you start digging deeper. Why are you here? No, but I mean, why are you? Who are you? Not your name. Who are you in your soul? Why are you here? What do you do? So what is it what's your job? Is that what you always wanted to do when you were a child? No? What did you want to do? Why didn't you do that? It's a shame. Do you have any kids? What do they do? Do they want to be a doctor too, or do they won't want to follow you? What's your son into? Is he, and then, but anyway, I find some stuff. I put a little hook in it, put a little pin in it, and then I'm over here and I go, really, you're a doctor, but these kids want, and I start linking people together, and then I start calling back these notions. And you think you're disappointed that's not your card. He's disappointed because he couldn't get into medical school. And then it becomes a community thing. It's only happening there. I'm taking risks because I'm pulling things out. I'm not necessarily making the most genius jokes about it, but I'm having an actual human conversation. Two human beings, we're trying to connect, but I'm putting in feelers, like a little probe, pull out a sample. Okay, I'm going to log that in my brain, log that in my little database, right? So I do that enough times, you're going to start, it's like a relational database, start making links. And then if you leave your routine open enough to bring some of the links in, and when you turn that last card over, you start tying, your brain, and you get good at it the more you do it, but it's a risk because it's very clumsy the first few times you try this. It's very clumsy and weird, but at least you're making the effort. People see that. But by the time you go, now, I don't know if this is your card, but I do know that because you're here tonight and because she's there tonight, there are people dying right now who need a doctor. But no, you decided to go see a magic show because you had the sweet, I don't know, but I'm just bringing it together and somehow bring it on home. And then you've had this event that could only happen tonight. And they know, and here's the point, they know that the next audience you work for will never have this same influx of crazy little moment, coincidence. I've seen comedians who do crowd work and they work the crowd. What do you do? And they try to make jokes and they try to link it to other people. And I've seen them fail miserably. And it's hard to watch when it's not done right or done well, or they're not good enough at it. But when it's done well, it's like anything else, magic, improv, comedy. When it's done badly, it's the hardest thing in the world to watch. But when it's done well, it's like it's wonderful. And it's the same with this. And that's what I'm talking about, taking risks beyond your little presentation that you've been rehearsing in your can. And I've decided before I even got into the room that this is what I'm going to do. And this is what the people are going to enjoy. No, you have to open yourself up to the whole experience and make it special tonight, and try hard to leave yourself open. You have to open your heart, open your mind, open your ears, listen, remember things, get their names. I'm talking on and on and on about this, but I think you take my point.
Yeah,
sure.
Cool.
Cool.
I'm going to give another little tip from, because I worked for years doing table magic, like in restaurants and dinner theaters and cocktail parties, and going around interrupting people and meeting people, and they don't know there's going to be a magician at the event, but it's like they didn't buy a ticket, but they're happy that that you're there and so forth. But here's a little tip. When you're doing magic for a group of people, let's say there's 7 people there, 5 people there, the first, and this was an old timer told me this a long time ago. It seems like an obvious idea, but a lot of people don't do this. Get all of their names. Hi, I'm David. And you're Joe, Steve, Mary, Phil, Barry, John, Susie. Pleasure to meet you. I'm David Copper Blangel. I'm the greatest magician ever. I'm going to show you, and then blah, 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 blah. But anyway, it's like a magic trick. So you filed away all those names. You know them. You've connected them to the people. 5 minutes later, you've been doing all this magic. 5 minutes later, when you go, now Barry, take a card and show it to Judy. You haven't used their names for 5. They forgot you even asked. They feel so good. It's like a magic trick. It's like a gift to use their name. They're so surprised that you even bothered to remember it. They're so pleased, and they're just still struck with that you were kind enough to use their name and remember it. It's like a magic trick. It's like having a final load that they forgot was there, and then you pop it out. And if you do it strategically, and then at the end of the night, I would go, well, thanks, Sally, Phil, Bob, da, da. And it's like, I'm horrible at remembering names, but I got good at it in my magic because I would attach it to certain moments. But I would make a point of remembering these names and then throw them back at them throughout the course of my time with them in strategic ways. And sometimes they talked about that more than the magic. They were more impressed and charmed by that. So that's a little tip, you know, because often we go, hi, what's your name? Nice to meet you. Forget, you know. Now, to be fair, at a lot of the corporate events, they all had name badges, so that made it easy. But in the restaurants and bars, they didn't. So.
Yeah, but with that, you create a real connection with the people. That is really cool.
It's amazing how strong it is. It's a very strong moment, and it's not to be overlooked.
That's how Max Maven said in this book, that you have a secret weapon with the audience.
He did?
Yeah.
Is that the Spanish version of Williamson?
Yes.
That's Spanish version. Yeah.
I hope it's better than the English version, because I don't. That was the thinnest book that Richard Kaufman ever produced. He told me that the printer had to put 2 blank pages on the outsides in order to justify a hardback spine, because it was too thin. I'm very proud of that fact.
David, talking about the Spanish version of the book, we are here, here in South America, we are very influenced by Spanish magic because of the language, more than the magic from other parts of Europe or the US. Do you see influences from Spanish magic in the US?
Yes. Not as much as I like, though, but yes, there's every other magician I know knows mnemonica and overuses it badly. And but what's a shame is they toss around, they do some of the tricks, and they'll do an homage. I see this a lot, an homage to the one-headed magician, René Levin. They'll tell the story of René Levin, then they'll do oil and water, something like that, with one hand, because they bought the book and they want to learn, and they like the moves. But I think they're missing a lot of what really makes Spanish, the Spanish school of magic, really special to me. I went on tour in China with Miguel Puga, Mago Miguel, and we did a whole tour of China together with some other magicians. And every night we had to entertain all the local Chinese dignitaries or something like that, and we were always doing our same tricks. But to watch him take a deck of cards and create the excitement and get these people laughing and smiling with his stories, and the way he would sell, he would go from dramatic to comic to quiet to this, to dramatic and this, and use the room and use his body, and it was theatrical and it was wonderful. And he would get so excited, he would stand there and throw a card, and it was, it's the theatricality of it is what I'm saying. It was more than just doing a magic trick. He was creating a moment and an excitement, and it happened to be a deck of cards, but it could have been anything else, and it was masterful. And to me, it embodied all the things I loved about, Ascanio and Juan and René Levin and all the great Gabi and all the great Spanish, but it was just this wonderful, I can't explain it. I don't have the words for it. The theatricality, and it's almost like a matador-like, the flair and the excitement that would build, for a close-up trick. You know what I'm talking about, of course. You don't see that as much in the U.S. because our influences were people like Di Vernon, where it was kind of, You know, it was very natural. You don't want to be too showy. It was all kind of, and then there was the Marlowe school, which was all very technical, and the East Coast versus West Coast styles of American close-up magic. And we had our guys who we followed, and they were these usually bar magicians or plumbers like Larry Jennings. They weren't great necessarily. The card men, you know, Marlowe was a mechanic and he was kind of cranky, and Vernon was, you know, a character, but he wasn't really a professional magician. He was, he would tell you he was an amateur magician, but they were great thinkers, but they weren't great performers, was my point. They weren't great performers. Craftsmen when it came to magic and examples and so forth. So the great cardmen that I saw coming up in America, Darwin Ortiz maybe, or people like, you know, there were technicians, but there weren't a lot of great entertainers who were also, but then I saw, you know, Juan and people coming from Spain, and not only were they great magicians, but they were just great entertainers. I mean, look at Danny, and look at, you know, it was great to see at the Magic Live last year. Henry Evans came in, and he was in the close-up show. And now most American magicians know Henry from standing behind and selling his tricks, his gimmick decks and gimmick cards and stuff. You know what I mean? That's kind of, a lot of us know him or from his act, FISM act and things like that. He sat down and borrowed an ordinary deck of cards, just borrowed a real deck of cards. And this was the Henry that a lot of my friends hadn't seen. And he improvised, or seemingly improvised, 15 minutes of the greatest magic, and he just sold it with his flair, and his skill was invisible. And that was the Henry I was so glad my American friends could see, because they kind of saw him as a dealer almost, kind of. It's a shame, you know, because they don't, but he was fantastic. And I have to say, it was a real highlight for me, because he's another one who embodies that kind of style of
and magic. He's also a really good dealer. His quality, his craft, but he's also such an amazing.
I'm not downgrading his being a dealer. I mean, it's wonderful. I know he comes up with great ideas. I'm just saying, as a performer with an ordinary deck of cards,
he's a showstopper. He's a showstopper. Yeah, people are standing up, clapping, go crazy with him.
Yeah, and I mean, we're conditioned. Everybody here loves Danny now. Danny is the new, you know, Juan for the American magicians scene, you know, because he's out there a lot. He's out there and he's doing, and he's being, but they hadn't seen Henry in that role for a long time. So it was this new generation seeing Henry, and they didn't know what to think of him. And it was great.
Cool.
Yeah, those things that Henry does improvising are insane.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
We don't see enough here. And I wish more of you guys would come up and blow us away.
David, all of magicians have a phase that I think you called I am gonna. Could you give us some advice to fast forward this phase?
That's a good word. Good word, fast forward. Yeah, I mean, I call it the I'm gonna school of magic, because what you're doing is the example is, I'm going to ask you to shuffle these cards, and I'm going to look away. I'm going to hand you a pen. I'm going to ask you to write your name on that, and I'm going to put that in the middle of the deck, and I'm gonna. That's all the patter I've prepared, because they haven't prepared anything. I'm as guilty as anybody. Believe me, I'm not saying that I'm above this. This is the way I came up doing this. It's called expository. When you're explaining what you're doing as you're doing it, because you haven't thought about anything else to say, right? Expository. Or you're trying to convince them with your words that things are fair. Right? I'm going to put this in the middle of the deck, and fair? Okay, I'm going to, look, you see it go in there? I'm going to, and you're explaining what's happening. Yeah, they can see it. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So shut up. You don't have to say, I'm going to take this card and put it in the deck. Yes, I can see that. I see you taking the card and putting it in the deck. Say
Just do
something
it.
interesting. Yeah, just do it. Say something else. And as an exercise, I would always just say the first thing that popped into my head, because my friends and I would talk about this, you know, when we were working the castle and things like that, challenge each other to be better. And we'd give each other a phrase. I'm going to give you a phrase. That's the first thing you're going to say. And you have to tell that story as you're doing the card trick. So a common one would be something like, my grandmother was ravaged by wolves. And when I say wolves, I don't mean actual wolf. You know, and it's just a ridiculous story. But how could you do this trick, you know, and then maybe tie it together with this pattern line, you know, something about wolves and walking to my grandmother being killed, and I don't know. But at least it jerks your mind, and it's an exercise. It's ridiculous. We would come up with these so funny tricks while we're saying something opposite of what we're doing. We're just telling us a story and not even talking about what's happening in our hands. And it's an interesting, difficult exercise. The other thing is you said fast forward, and I was just talking to somebody today about this. I've been giving, now that I'm stuck indoors like everybody else, I've been giving some online classes to a few people, lessons. The guys want to improve a routine or moves or a little family show, whatever it is. And I've just been lending, you know, myself to help them a little bit online. And one of the things I tell them is, don't hand the reins, you know, the reins of a horse, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Don't hand the reins to the spectator. And what that means is when you go, hello, would you please shuffle the cards? Be very careful about that moment, because they are now in control. Never ask a question, an open question, you know, like, are you satisfied with the deck? Or, you know, are your cards lost in there, correct? Would you like to do it? You're asking too many questions. You're handing them the reins, because they can say anything they want now. They can actually order a drink now while they got the cards in your hand, and their friend, you told me you were going to have the cell phone back at the thing, and you're sitting there, you know, with your thumb up your ass going, I've just handed the reins to this person. They've got control of my show, of my deck, of everybody's attention. And it's things like that you don't think about when you're practicing your magic, you know, when you're saying, sign your name on the card, you give them and you shuffle the deck. And be careful about these moments, because what I say is, think of it like you're driving a motorboat, a speedboat, and the audience is on skis behind you. You know what I mean? They're behind you, and you're making the wake. You're driving the boat. Don't let somebody else drive the boat. They're behind you. So you say, and of course, and as I say this, you can think of 200 counter examples, but this is how I think about it when I'm doing magic. Shuffle the cards as much as you like. That's enough. I don't want you getting too, and you, here, do me a favor. Take this pen. He's going to write his name here while how you doing tonight? Would you get me one of those drinks? Even though it's in the center of the pack, you know, and you're driving this thing, and because you've done it enough, you practice enough, you know what you're going to say next. You've decided what the premise is, what the road is, and you're leading them down the path. Don't let them lead you. And so you have to have enough, I call it connecting tissue or stepping stones. What's the next idea? Not what's the next move, what's the next idea, or what's the one idea you're driving to with many ideas? And what are you going to say, and what are you going to do to get them there and to build interest and push the effect? Because most card tricks, let's face it, are a process. And the worst kind of magic, the hardest kind of magic to sell is like mental magic, because it's, you know, there's a lot of process, you know, write this down and put this over here, and I'm going to do this. There's a lot of process. And the hard part is making that process go away or seemingly disappear, like there was no process, you know. And how do you minimize the process and maximize the interest and the entertainment value? So, and I think it has to do with planning ahead. And here I am, the guy who used to improvise everything, talking about scripting, but you need to have a map. You need to have a map and follow the dotted lines. Now you can go off the path when you're having fun or see an interesting moment, but you got to get back on the path, and you have to know how you're going to do it. I didn't
Really,
answer
really
your
good
question at all.
advice.
I talked a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks for that advice.
Hey, by the way,
David,
Ricardo. By the way,
Yeah.
what David talked, when he mentioned the idea of not just doing "I'm gonna" is related to what a recent talk with Gabi Paredes from Spain. He said he pretty much suggests not to do that, to not to be expository and suggest ideas. For instance, the idea of the Coleridge flower, of giving suggestive ideas while you do a trick that are related to the trick, metaphors, suggesting to people. He even created a current of magic called fictional magic, where the magic is not self-explanatory, but it suggests something else. He takes the spectator towards the sensitive and less on the technical part. So it's really related to what you say. Stopping what I'm gonna do and suggesting something else, probably, hopefully.
Well, he's a lot smarter than me. He's one of those people who's a deep thinker in magic, and he's the kind of guy you need to be asking these questions to, not me.
we had a conversation with Gabi some days ago.
Oh, wonderful.
It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
David, I have another question from Thomas, the stalker guy.
Thomas!
And he asked, how do you work on a new routine? What is your starting point, and when do you start trying that new thing?
It's changed over the years, of course, because now I'm like in these production shows now. I'm in these big shows and they expect, kind of polished material. And
Sure.
It's hard because I don't really have any place. Now, when I was young, I had places I could work where I could be bad, and try things out. I don't have that right now. And it's harder when you don't have a place to go be bad. And so the process now is I kind of have to, like, for example, I had to have a new trick for Circus 1903. We went back to London a second year in a row, and they go, we need another big comedy magic thing to fill, 10 minutes or something while we're changing the scenery behind you. What do you got? Now, I could easily go to the magic catalog and look for some existing trick and then paint it like a circus and have some pepper it with circus patter, things like that. But I didn't want to do that. I was like, if this is going to be so, I want to do something original and new, and and this is my opportunity to really. So at that time, I was working in the Illusionists in Reno in a casino show for 6 months. This was last year. So I was lucky because I was living in Reno with Mark Kalin, Mark Kalin and Ginger. He happened to live in town. And David Kaplan. Do you know David Kaplan, American comedy magician?
Yeah.
Wonderful vaudevillian.
He was in Chile a few years ago, by the way.
Ah, wonderful. Yeah. He lives here in Ohio near me. He's a good friend.
Oh, cool.
And also Tyler Wilson, a very offbeat Canadian close-up magician. Tyler Wilson was living in Reno. So we would get together in a little coffee shop. I would buy them all coffee and treats and cakes and get ideas for them for free. I was very lucky. So we pounded out this routine over the course of 3 or 4 months. I knew I wanted to have a carnival game, and I knew I wanted to have a prediction, but I also knew I wanted to have comedy, and the dad would fail, and the little daughter, he's trying to win an elephant for her, one of these stuffed elephants, and he would fail and she would, and I just knew all the elements, but I just putting it together, and I finally built it. I spent a couple $1,000s on props, and we built these, and I had printing done and banners and things, and we put it on stage, and it was horrible, and we videotape it, and then we'd go away and think about it some more, and then I make a change the next night. And it took weeks and weeks, and then finally I went to London, and I had some of the props, and we had other props printed and painted. And by the time we got it on stage in Birmingham at the big Hippodrome Theater there, 3,000 people, we got there, and it was a long, hard slog. But that opening night, when we did this crazy routine, the audience was cheering and laughing. We had some actual surprises in it. I was so glad, but it didn't come from me. It was a collaboration of all of us fighting different ideas and just changing over time, and now I had the pressure of a production company waiting for results. When I had to come up with stuff on my own, I had my own internal pressures that I would do. And the process is, you know, I would try things out in front of an audience all the time. And you slip it in between two things that you know what you're doing. And then you trot out this new piece and give it a try. And then you figure out where the weak spots are. And then you quickly get out of it and finish strong, you know. But that's kind of what I would do. But I always looked for a little tip. If you're looking for some new material or looking for, if you're a trick you really love, think about this. What else could I do? What trick can I have within it? So here's my main trick, but what can nest like a Russian doll? What can be inside there to surprise them? And most tricks have an obvious ending, right? Most tricks have an obvious ending. Is there any way to put some twist here that nobody could have predicted, that isn't obvious? The bill, hold the lemon, the bill disappears, the bill's in the lemon. That's a straight line. And I think it's a little, even, I don't care how well it's done, they know the bill's going to be in the lemon because of the way you set it up. But what else could happen in the middle, on the route from the bill going to the lemon? And what would they find inside the lemon that might shock even magicians or yourself? You know what I mean? Or please people. And they go, I've seen something new and fresh. Challenge yourself to take it a little further. Everything you do, whether it's a 4-ace trick or your favorite routine from your favorite magician, go, that's great. He did it that way for years. Time for me to bring it into the new century. It's time for me. I'm going to take it upon myself to make this better. I'm going to spend the time. I'm going to think about it while I'm taking a shower, while I'm walking my dog. I know there's something, there's a nugget of something here. And it's maybe it comes from a different trick. So I'll nest these tricks together. So that's what I would do. I would challenge yourself. Take your favorite trick and go, okay, let's make this really rock now. Let's make it scalable. Let's take my favorite close-up trick. How can I make this a stage routine that I could do for 3,000 people? This principle, this idea, you know, there's different ways to challenge yourself with things tools you already have, tricks you already know. And sometimes things fit together in a little puzzle. You'll be very pleased.
Cool.
David, we are just in time, but for closing this interview,
No,
I would like.
I was
to,
just starting to have fun.
I would like to ask you if you could talk about some anecdotic facts, like why don't you use a pad, a surface pad? And if you could talk about what happened in a convention when you were young, with some books that you loved. Do you remember?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Because I think that is very magical. What happened?
Yeah, I don't use a close-up mat normally. I'll just practice shuffling and dealing on a wooden table or a glass or something like that, marble. I don't use. See, look, I need a close-up mat. Look at that. I can't even pick them up. But because when I was about 14 years old, I was at a magic convention, and I had my brand new Gibson close-up mat. Now look behind me. See this? I always tell this story, but this is not a close-up mat. I got this at Target. It's a kitchen floor mat. You put it on the floor to stand on when you're washing dishes. And I found that recently. So, but I had my favorite close-up mat. I just bought this beautiful Gibson close-up mat. I was 14 years old at a magic convention on the East Coast of USA. And Derek Dingle, one of my heroes, walks by. And he says, this, and he takes it like this, is a crutch. And he threw it out the window. We're on like the 4th floor in a big city, and the window was open. He throws it out the window. He goes, this is a crutch. I think he was drunk. He used to drink. He had a drink in his hand. You know? He goes, you need to learn how to do all those things on a smooth table, on a wet bar, sticky restaurant table. You're not going to be carrying a close-up mat around with you the rest of your life, you know, under your arm. You got to go from, you could work anywhere. If you can learn to do all your tricks and shuffles, if you need to have people hold cards or put them on glasses or slide them to the edge of the table to pick up, that's how you have to rehearse it. And I was like, yes, Lord, he was God talking to me, you know. So I took that advice And I never used a close-up mat for years, and practiced all my, pull through, push through, zero shuffles, everything, all my routines, 4-ace tricks on a solid surface. And I'm glad. It was a great lesson, because now I can work anywhere. I don't worry about it at all. I don't even like close-up mats. They're too soft for me. It's too confining. It's everything happens here. I want things to happen here and here and here. But anyway, the end of that story is about 3 years later, I'm at another magic convention, and one of the guest artists is Derek Dingle, and they introduce him. And now Derek Dingle, he comes out, and of course he lays down a close-up mat. I was like, you bastard. Oh, funny. The other story you're telling is, well, I'll just finish by, I was in a kid, and my mom she found a magazine article about Abbott's Magic Convention in Colon, Michigan. And it wasn't too far from us, about a 10-hour drive north in Michigan. So she took me there with another little kid from my town. And we had a tent, small tent. And there was a dairy field where cows lived out on the edge of town. And some people were setting up tents and camping there for the magic convention. So she dropped us off with the tent and the sleeping bags, and she said, see ya. And my mom drove off to Wisconsin to go visit her sister, And so it was me and this other kid. We're like 13 years old, 12, something like that, 13. We barely know how to put up a tent. So we put up our tent, and it was the greatest weekend of my life, because that's where I met all these wonderful magicians, from Neil Foster to a young Tom Mullica, and Jay Marshall and Carol Fox, and Jose De La Torre was at that first one. And it was just fantastic. It was the most magical weekend of my life. But, we were idiots. We didn't know how to make a tent, and we put it down in the bottom of the hill. So it rained like the second night, the big, horrible thunderstorm, and all the water went right into our tent. And my mom gave me some money, and I bought all these books. I bought like, I don't know, like the Tarbell course, a few of those. And I bought just all these wonderful books. I was so excited and they were all ruined. Every book, and the other kid, his books were ruined too. We had some wonderful books and one of the other magicians there, an older gentleman, I don't know who it was to this day. He was I think he was a mentalist. I remember he backed his car. He had a Mercedes-Benz. He had a very nice car. I remember it was a Mercedes. And he backed it down the hill, through the field, down the hill, and helped us get all of our crap out, all of our wet things. And the next day, he went into the dealer's room, and he bought every book that we had lost. He bought the Tarbell books and the encyclopedia cards, whatever it was that we lost. He bought all these books, and he presented them to us. And I'm a 13-year-old kid from a small town, and nothing like that had ever happened in my life. A stranger being so kind and doing something like this. And it was a huge gesture. And in that moment, I think the story I told was, in that moment, I knew that this was the life for me. This was the community that I wanted to be a part of, because I realized at that moment that there was a community and there was a fraternity of strangers coming together in a small town, a cow field, with a shared interest, a shared love, passion, for this art of magic. It connected everybody. And so that was a big impression. And I still remember it to this day. And I always remember that when I see young magicians at a convention, and I know how much fun people are having. And when and when Thomas reaches out to me, young Thomas there, and reaches out to me over the internet, I used to write letters to Derek Dingle when I was his age. And I used to write letters to Diver and all my heroes. And so, yeah, it's wonderful to see it continue. And here we are on the internet. It's amazing.
Thank you, David. That's a really beautiful story. I think it's a really cool thing to finish this. I don't know what you think, Pablo.
No, I heard that story, but I wanted to hear it again because I think that it's very magical.
Well,
yeah,
listen, guys, it's the same as you guys just reaching out to me and asking me to be here. Look at this, we're all here, and it is magical. And And I've seen a lot of this during this COVID time, the magic community kind of coming together. And it's important that we all know we have each other's back, and we all have this kind of shared world we live in, this bubble, this subculture, you know, that we care about. So thanks for the invite. I'm really happy to be here. And it's so great to see some of my old friends out there. You know, I don't know why you listen to me. I wish we could just watch Luis do card tricks for the last hour. That'd be more fun. Nicholas, what are you working on? Nicholas Gentile. Oh, look, he looked at his screen. What are you shuffling cards there or something? What do you got? Show me your second deal. Oh, he's looking at his phone. Never mind. Thomas, what do you got in your hands right now? Let's see some cards. Oh, there he goes. Ridiculous. You overpaid. Whatever you paid for that, you overpaid.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Really, really thank you. You're a kind guy. We're really grateful for this, for your time.
Thank you, guys. Well, tell all the guys down in Chile and Carla, my good friend Carla, to keep inviting me. Someday I'll be able to say yes.
Yeah, for sure. We hope to see you soon here.
I hope so too. Where in Colombia are you, Luis? Are you in? You can't hear. Oh, you can't talk. Okay. Does it start with a B or a C? C?
C.
You're in the capital? Okay, next time I come through on the Disney ship, I usually fly in there before we go through the canal, so.
He has his microphone open.
I know. It's open now, you can talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my friend. Yes, I am in Bogota.
Ah, Bogota.
Yeah, but you can come anytime you want. It's your house.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you, friend.
Bye,
David,
everybody. Thanks for having me.
Again, thank you very much for your time and your words, for everything that you have done and will do in magic. You are really and a truly inspiration for a lot of magicians.
I know.
Thank you, and we hope to see you soon here in Chile.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Adios.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you very, very much.